Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's video, an HOA stole my house by putting a lien on it and then sold it for $25,000. If you haven't already, please check out my podcast on Spotify and you will find exclusive episodes and early access to new stories. And the title story starts like this. When I was about 30 years old, I got a call that my parents had been in a serious car accident. I don't want to upset anybody with details, so I'll just say that neither of them made it. For some people, 30 seems like an adult that is fully capable, but I was drowned in paperwork that I didn't know what to do with. I felt like a kid again and I had no idea how to handle any of the legal crap while also trying to grieve. It took a few weeks after the whole thing for death certificates to get sent to me and other boring things to get sorted out. All that's important to this story was that they owned a house and left it to me in their will. I wanted to move back there anyway, so I gave notice on my apartment and got all my stuff moved out and into the house. This entire process was about 3 months of nobody living at the house until all the papers were signed and boxes were in the front door. I finally felt like I was gonna have some time to myself and could process and grieve their death. Instead, I was contacted by the local HOA and they wanted to start their own crap with me. They told me that they had not yet received dues from my house in over a year and needed me to give them that money. They wanted over $10,000, claiming it was owed to them. I knew that my parents never joined the HOA because I once had a long conversation about it with them. I was right out of college and thinking of getting a house or a condo instead of just an apartment. All of them said that they had HOA fees and I always questioned my dad what that meant. He explained them and his opinion on them being bad, telling me that if I could not be a part of one, it would be the best idea. When I asked if he was in one, he told me that he never joined and never planned to. I told them that my parents were not part of the HOA and they must have made a mistake. They insisted on me giving them the money. I didn't have that kind of money on hand, and even if I did, I was not gonna hand it over. Not only did I just spend a fortune on funeral home costs, but I knew I was getting scammed. While I was 30, I looked about 20 years old with a baby face, and they probably assumed that they could take advantage of me. I was not gonna let that happen and instead told them that I was not paying and they could just deal with it. I don't know how they managed it, but they got a lien put on my house and started the process of selling it within the next couple of weeks. My guess is they started this process before even talking to me in the first place, not knowing the home was gonna be inherited, marking the reason for the lien being non-payment of dues. Which makes no sense because I also never signed up to be a member of this HOA either. Yet some of the dues I owed were stated for times I owned the house. I didn't know what the hell I was supposed to do and I called my uncle to come and help me. I was depressed, anxious and desperate for some peace and quiet. He was a lawyer and told me that the HOA did not have the right to just sell the house, especially if they could not prove that dues were owed and not paid. He lived a couple of states away but was gonna come in and help me figure everything out. In the meantime, I was going to the city hall to try and find out about the house being sold and tried to delay it at the very least. That was when I found out there was already an offer put on the house the very same day, hitting the HOA asking price and everything, which I found odd in this economy. However, it turns out they were selling a home worth about $700,000 for only $25,000. It looked like the biggest mistake ever made, but I was assured they double-checked everything. I got the name of the person set up to buy my house and was gonna contact them to try and explain the situation. The name looked familiar, like it was somewhere deep in my subconscious, so I decided to Google the name instead and I found a photo of a woman pop up and the fact that she was the president of the HOA in the first search result I found. It was at this point I realized I was being scammed so they could get cheap property and I wouldn't know what to do about it. With this information, my uncle felt that I had a really strong case and filed the lawsuit which would pause the selling of the house until everything was sorted. We did not go to court in front of a judge and stuff like on TV, instead I was just in a room with a bunch of people wearing suits that I assumed were all lawyers. And then of course me, the HOA representatives minus the president, which seemed very convenient. The HOA started talking about laws and rules that if dues were not paid for a certain amount of time or dollar amount, they were allowed to put a lien on the property in order to get their money, claiming they were only gonna take the $10,000 they were owed and give me the rest of it. I was just getting asked questions like when I joined the HOA, to which I said never, and to confirm papers regarding the death of my parents. I know other countries are different, but here the HOA had the burden to prove if money was owed to them. They had no records of notices being sent to my parents or any records of dues being paid by them or me. Also, no documents confirming that anybody from that house was part of the HOA to begin with. They really thought I would just give in to what they wanted or not be able to get a lawyer to represent me. We were not done once we got the lien removed and the house off the market. We wanted to ask them in front of court officials why they were selling the house for so much under market value and it going to the HOA president herself. I didn't know he had this, but my uncle pulled out papers showing past properties that the HOA had sold to members for dirt cheap. Several of them to the HOA president, which she was using to rent out and make a ton of money off of. This was not a criminal case, so we couldn't do anything drastic, but the DA was alerted and interested in digging into the dirty business practices. As they dug, it turned out I was not the only person they put an illegitimate house lien on. It was also not really legal for the HOA president to let the homes go for cheap just to buy them up and give the past owners as little money as possible. She got thrown under the bus hard and had to take the entire blame for everything. She got sent to prison for a couple of years, and without her, the entire HOA fell apart. It only took about a year before there was no longer a sign of them in the entire neighborhood. Finally, after dealing with them trying to take away the house and scam me for looking young, I could finally grieve in peace. To have the one thing I wanted and be left alone to handle my own emotions instead of all of their shady crap. In case you were wondering, I'm now back in this beautiful house without a ridiculous HOA breathing on my neck, making my life a living nightmare. And yeah, Ripe Stars, if you still enjoy the HOA stories, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, post a comment and maybe even like the video, because that would help me tremendously. Either way, the next one is titled Done with the Neighbor. So this story happened about a decade ago when I was still a teenager and used to live in my parents' house. We are migrants and are on good terms with all the neighbors since the 90s, but we do have a reputation in the neighborhood of frequently undertaking ambitious DIY home improvements in an atypical manner to what locals expect. Our house is separated from the neighbors with a living hedge wall of cypress trees that grow on our property. At the time of this story, we already lived in the house for the better part of the decade with the same neighbors and the same cypress trees. One day, out of the blue, and one of the neighbors sees my mom working in the garden and starts complaining about the state of the living hedge on her side of the property. We usually trim the hedge only from our side and most of the top that we can reach. The neighbor complains and demands us to trim the hedge from their side as well. In her eyes, as the hedge wall is planted on our property, it's 100% our responsibility and they are tired of maintaining it from their side. The altercation is very brief as my mother surprisingly quickly replies, "Okay," and walks off grinning. Unbeknownst to the neighbor, we already were planning to cut down the hedges to the stumps so that they could regrow anew, as the existing hedge was very old and was not particularly sightly. Previously, we postponed these works as we didn't want to upset the neighbors, but this demand provided the perfect excuse. So the next day, while the neighbors are at work, we cut down all the hedges surrounding our property to barely above ground. As we are finishing clearing up the trimmings, the neighbors come back home from work, shocked to discover the hedge practically gone. They look around and realize that with the hedge wall gone, their whole backyard, kitchen, living room and bedroom are on full display through the windows. The neighbor questions what we have done and why, as they would no longer have any privacy in their own home. My mom, without missing a beat, replies, "We fixed the problem, the hedge will no longer need trimming from your side," and goes back to clearing up. Within a week, the neighbors came back to us and asked for permission to construct a wooden fence on our property to protect their privacy. We happily agreed as long as they paid for it all, as we did not mind waiting a couple of years for the hedge to regrow. Our privacy was much less impacted. They built the fence within the week and it provided a good surface for some vine flowers to grow instead of the cypress trees that my mother had wanted to plant for a long time. Added, people are concerned that the neighbors would be able to claim some of the land as theirs. This is not the case as the property delineation markers are still there and nobody would ever move and tamper with them. Even if they did, this is in an EU country and our land is marked based on specific coordinates and not some arbitrary lines such as a fence, no matter the situation. When the fence was being constructed, we made sure that this was the case. I should have originally specified that they effectively paid and constructed a fence for us that we legally own. And the next one is titled Solving Issues. background, this happened a while ago when we lived on a city block of semi-detached houses with tiny front yards. At one point, the older guy who lived next door, there was an alley with sidewalks and grass separating our house from his, which had another house attached to it, passed away and a flipper got a hold of the house. They basically did a cosmetic pass and sold it for tons more than they paid. New neighbors seemed nice, but immediately began having tons of problems with the house and a couple of years later had moved across the country and abandoned the property. I had their number and called to ask if they minded me cutting the grass in front because it was really long. They were super apologetic and explained that they just couldn't afford to keep up with the repairs and the mortgage and the house was gonna be foreclosed on. And even tried to pay me for cutting the grass, which I refused. It only took about 5 minutes extra, these are city yards we are talking about, and kept it from looking like there was a vacant house on the block. One day I had just gotten done cutting the grass and went back inside when there was some knocking at the door. I look out and it's the neighbor 2 houses down with the vacant in-betweeners attached to their house. They were sort of urgently/angrily demanding that I come look at something. Thinking there was something consequential going on, I came out and walked with them to the front of their house. Neighbor looking at their yard in irritation. "Do you see what's going on here?" Me looking around having not a clue. So it turns out that each time I cut the grass, I was inadvertently blowing grass clippings onto the neighbor's landscape pavers, and they were really not pleased with this. I tried to explain how I was just trying to help keep the block looking nice by cutting the grass, and that as soon as a mild breeze came by, the grass clippings would vanish from the pavers. Well, they were not too happy with that and demanded that I keep the clippings off their pavers or sweep them off whenever I cut the grass. At that point I was pretty annoyed, but just said in my nicest neighbor voice, "No problem at all, I will take care of it, you won't have any more issues." Went to get a push broom, swept their pavers off real nice and then proceeded to comply with the request. I made damn sure 0 grass clippings got on their pavers by not ever cutting the grass in front of the abandoned house attached to their house, remember, again. It looked atrocious until it dawned on them it was now their responsibility and ended up having to pay someone to keep cutting it until the house went through foreclosure. And the next one is a story from r/am I the a-hole. I have a 9-year-old daughter who has suffered with health problems her entire life. We are always in and out of hospitals and my next door neighbor has recently begun selling these vitamin supplements or something. I personally hate multi-level marketing schemes and I'm so freaking sick of them that I don't even entertain them anymore. I always reply no to those virtual party invitations. I am never outright rude about it, but I just don't feel comfortable supporting MLMs. I think they are predatory and make their money by banking on people not being able to say no to their friends. Anyway, she's been bugging me for quite a long time about buying some of her supplements. She usually catches me on my way to get the mail or take out the garbage, and I've always very politely told her no thank you. Well, yesterday my husband and I were on our way to take our daughter to the hospital and she caught us in our driveway. She came up to us and asked how our daughter was doing, expressed her sympathies that our daughter needed another procedure, and then once again tried to pitch us her stupid vitamins. Once again, I told her no, she got super persistent and kept on asking why. I was trying to be polite, so I told her that money was tight right now, especially with all of our daughter's hospital bills. She then had the nerve to say, well, imagine how much you would save on hospital bills if you would just give your daughter these supplements. At this point, my husband was in the car with our daughter, so he didn't hear her comment. But he did hear me start to scream at her. How dare she trivialize my daughter's medical issues like that? I'm not comfortable talking about my daughter's medical history on here, but please know that it's not something that can be fixed with vitamins. So I told her to take her stupid MLM vitamin supplements and shove them right up her butt. My husband thinks I overreacted. I should have just politely told her no again and left it at that. He says I made things super awkward for us since she's our neighbor. He wants me to apologize, but I think that she's the one who should be apologizing. I told her no, not once, not twice, but at least 15 times, and she still haunts me. And then she had the nerve to bring my daughter's medical issues into it. So yeah, Ripe Stars, let me know in the comments whether you think OP is the a-hole here or not. But then again, I would say if you think that OP is the a-hole, then you're probably a connoisseur of MLMs. I'd say there is no way in hell that OP is ever the a-hole in this story. Anyway, let's see what Reddit has to say. So one comment said, "Not the a-hole, not even the slightest, no apology needed. If anything, you should cut any interaction with her. Also, best wishes to your daughter." Comment number 2, "Not the a-hole. Almost by default, you are not the a-hole when dealing with MLM degenerates. But in this case, you are absolutely not the a-hole. These people are literally trained to do crap like this. AKA prey on your daughter's medical problems in order to sell you their worthless garbage. You can tell them no politely 1,000 times and they will keep coming back until you explode at them." Comment number 3, "Not the a-hole. What the hell is wrong with that person? Firstly, no means no. Secondly, you don't approach someone you know is maybe immunocompromised in these times. And third, that comment about your daughter's health is way out of line. Don't apologize, you have done nothing wrong." And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. And the next one is titled, "I got the boss fired." And it is an absolute XXL story. Background: I've been working the retail business for over 20 years and let me tell you, some of the managers they hire, I can do a better job. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. Over the years of doing retail, I have established a reputation for myself. I am Mrs. Reliable. Need some to come in? They call me. Need someone to stay late? They call me. Need to switch with someone because management said no for your day off? They call me. Need to switch with someone because of a last-minute plan? They call me. You can probably see where this story might be going, right? So this story takes place a couple of years ago when I worked in a major grocery store in my town/city as a cashier. Onto the story. This has taken place a couple of years ago, back in 2020. I'm on my 2 years at this store and we went through so many people and managers, it was not funny. Literally, it felt like we had a revolving door with how much turnover in employment we had. Getting back to the story, I was a cashier and the thing about me doing the job is that I have a tendency to be too good at my job. I was just hired to be a cashier. I was not a manager nor a monitor, someone that is a step down from management but doesn't have all the responsibilities of management, nor was a customer service. However, I was trained for nearly all the duties of someone who is. Need change? I went to cashier, got the money out of the drawer and went to grab the change that they needed. Need an override? I came over to see what the problem is and did the override. Need something from behind the counter? I just need to know what it is that you need and I went and grabbed it. I did all this on top of my cashier duties and self-checkout duties. Then douchebag came along, my manager at the time, let's call her Ashley. Ashley is the front-end manager, meaning she is in charge of everything that goes on at the registers, cash office, where all the money is, customer service and the self-checkouts. Now, I liked Ashley. She was a really good boss and I liked working with her. However, Ashley had gotten pregnant and was expecting her second child. I was excited for her. Unfortunately, when Ashley came back, though, she was no longer going to be a manager, nor was she going to go full-time. She decided to come back as part-time. I cannot really blame her though, you are working 40 hours a week and are not allowed any overtime whatsoever. Plus, you can be working as early as 5 AM to working as late as whenever the last customer decides to leave. Last time that happened, when didn't get out until 11:15 PM. Enter the douchebag. If you ever wonder what happened to that spoiled brat in school whose mommy never said no and always got what they always wanted, that is douchebag all grown up in a manager's position. Douchebag was the type of manager that if he told you to do something, he expected you to do it without any questions. Have plans after work? Douchebag expected you to whip out your phone right then and there and cancel your plans and come into work instead. Have a doctor's appointment? Douchebag expected to cancel that appointment and then come into work. If you told him no, he would say in the most condescending tone, "Well, I need you to do it anyway." And then just standing there scowling at you the whole time, basically trying to intimidate you by making you feel so uncomfortable by the staring until you cave in. So now for the setup. Now, I had my fair share of awful managers to the point where if I didn't need the money, I would have walked right out right then and there and never returned. And also, I had my fair share of good managers. Douchebag was somewhere in the middle, leaning more towards the walking out. Now, with me, I'll admit. Over the years, I developed a sassy, sarcastic personality. I am blunt, no filter, say what's on my mind, and I don't put up with people's BS. Apparently, douchebag never got the memo of me not taking people's BS. Around this time, summer was ending, meaning we were in the now hiring stage and many positions were starting to open up in the store. Keep this in mind, what douchebag did to get me to start my pro revenge? Strike number 1 was the following. I had out-of-patient vein surgery done on one of my legs and needed to take a few days off. Since I had some vacation time saved up, I used my hours for those few days that I didn't have to worry so much about not getting paid. Douchebag called me a day before I was supposed to come in asking if I can do a 9 to 1. I asked him 3 times over the phone, who is closing? Because originally I was supposed to close that day until I got my approval for my days off. Douchebag never answered me, so I just figured they had it covered. I came in and of course halfway through my shift, douchebag calls me over and says that they don't have a closer. Or closer, I'm not exactly sure how to say that. Keep in mind that I asked him 3 times over the phone who was closing. Douchebag wanted me to clock out, go home for a few hours and then come to work and close. I said no, and then he tried the whole guilt tripping about not having anyone and that we really need you to do this. I said no because number 1, I'm really tired and just came off surgery like 3 days ago, and number 2, I already made plans with my husband for the evening. Of course, douchebag did not like this because the next time I came to work, douchebag was just being petty and passive-aggressive with me. Basically, he will either pretend I was not there, ignored me, or the transaction that he was doing was taking longer than it should, and then chastise me in front of the customers for taking too long to get him. When I had my follow-up appointment with the vein doctor, douchebag asked me if I can come earlier. I told him no, I cannot, because I have a doctor's appointment in the morning that day. Then he did his usual, well, need you to do it anyway. And then started to doing that stare with me. Unfortunately for him, I am used to this when it comes to Karens and Kevins trying to intimidate me because something didn't come right. I quickly shut that down by getting the other cashier's attentions when they need help with something, or quickly grabbed a customer's attention. When I came in after my appointment, douchebag with a smug grin very loudly in earshot of the bigwigs from corporate visiting that day, well OP, looks like you noticed that I didn't call you in, because we didn't need you. I replied, good, because I wasn't able to come in early anyway. Strike number 2, remember how I said that the store had openings? Well, it turns out customer service needed some help and the only way to get there was to ask your manager. So I went to douchebag and asked about being at the customer service desk. With everything that I've already been doing, I was basically the front-end assistant manager without the pay and the title. Douchebag said that he would get back to me, especially since I've been doing a great job. 2 to 3 weeks later, I am seeing people that I trained or have started months after I did, getting promoted to customer service desk while I stayed as a cashier with all the others' responsibilities piled on top. The customer service desk position would have easily been a 0.50 cent raise. The monitor position would have been a 0.75 cent raise. And of course, douchebag did not want to pay more for doing the exact same thing that I was already doing. I was starting to get the message of, why pay for the cow when the milk is free? So, strike number 3. I was starting to look for another job at this point because I was getting sick and tired of how I was being treated, but I wanted to try and give this guy one last chance. So I found out that the seafood department in my store had an opening, and I even talked to the seafood department manager Debbie about me possibly being in her department. He was ecstatic to have me and was willing to work around my college schedule. I had to talk to my manager douchebag in order to get the transfer going. I talked to douchebag and he started to come up with any and all kinds of excuses to not have me transferred. I quickly shut that down, and even the one where he tried to say that I cannot because another coworker was transferring. The first time I've heard of this. But then the coworker said they had no problem with me going, so I thought that was that. Right? Wrong. 3 to 4 weeks have passed and I've been getting nowhere with the whole transferring to the other department. Even Debbie was wondering why it was taking so long to get to the seafood department and why management was dragging their feet with this. Turns out, douchebag blocked my transfer and they wound up hiring a new employee to the seafood department. Douchebag thought that if there was no positions available and he can just deny my transfer, that I have no choice but to stay. After an argument between the two of us about this because I was calling him out on his BS, douchebag said the magic words, "Just do your job." So cue the malicious compliance. Just do my job? Okay, I was so glad that the wearing a mask was required, otherwise douchebag might have seen my evil smile when I agreed to just do my job. Need an override? Sorry, but I'm not management, nor am I a monitor, so I cannot do that. Let me go grab someone who can. Need change? Sorry, but I'm not management, nor am I a monitor, so I cannot do that. Let me go grab someone who can. Need something behind the customer service desk? Sorry, but I'm not trained, nor am I customer service. Let me grab someone who can get that for you. Douchebag manager was at his wit's end and even tried to write me up for something. I quickly shut that down when I started to recite what being a cashier entails and what my actual job of being a cashier is. And I told him that if he wants me to continue with all those responsibilities, that he needs to promote me so I can do all those responsibilities. He quickly stepped back into being his passive-aggressive behavior that I quickly shut down. I eventually found another job with a better pay and better benefits and handed in my resignation of me leaving in 10 days. That douchebag tried to deny and say, "No, you have to give us 2 weeks notice." I quickly shut that down with a response, "You would not be giving us a 2-week notice if you're going to fire us, or lay us off or let go. Just a 2-minute warning." Cue the petty revenge. Now, you're probably wondering what could I have possibly done for the petty revenge, right? Well, there was an old saying, never kill the golden goose. Well, readers, what do you think happens to a department that is solely dependable on one person whose reputation is Mrs. Reliable? Well, the following. Need me to come in on my day off? Sorry, I can't. I have plans. Need me to stay late? Sorry, I can't. Already made plans. Someone called out? Sorry, cannot make it. I did this throughout my entire rest of my stay at that place, and douchebag could not do anything about it either, and it was starting to get to him on what happens when you rely heavily on someone else but treat them so badly that they actually decide to leave. Douchebag's performance, because I wasn't there to cover his ass, was starting to take a toll. He had to do much more now of his own responsibilities, and there wasn't a thing he could do to me. He kept trying to be extra passive-aggressive with me, to which I just smiled and waved and said goodbye to everyone but him. Now, this would not be a pro-revenge story without the actual pro-revenge. After talking to a friend of mine about what happened when I worked there, he told me to report this to the district manager, because that kind of behavior is not good for the workplace. So cue the pro-revenge. I got the email address of the district manager from my friend, and then I went back to the store as a customer. I kept in touch with a couple of my old co-workers and kept asking them how they were doing and how is work going. None of them had a problem in venting to me on how bad things were getting with douchebag. I asked if they did not mind if I put their name in the complaint or if they just wanted to be anonymous. A lot of them chose the latter. I whipped out my phone, used the quick memo app that I had, and quickly wrote the notes in my phone. The date and the register that the cashier was on at the time. I sent that email with the attached notes and with the entire account on my part as well to the district manager. Now, this would not be a pro-revenge if it just stopped there. I took a step further. You see, with the receipts that we get, there is a survey on the bottom of every receipt, and management kept trying to boost us to get customers to take the survey, because it helped with the story front and all the points that the store gets. Well, here's the thing about that survey. When you fill out the survey, including the comments, everyone gets to see it, and I mean everyone, I really mean everyone. Douchebag, the assistant store manager, the regional manager, the district manager, and the representative of corporate gets to see it all. So you can imagine what I did. Needed a snack for school? Filled out the survey. Needed groceries? Filled out the survey. I went to that store multiple times and gotten so many different surveys because there was not a limit for how many you can fill out. And I made sure to put everything that douchebag was doing on all those surveys, including how he treated his employees. 3 months after I left, the person they hired back in seafood to make sure I couldn't go back there quit. 6 months after I left, Douchebag was nowhere to be found, a new manager took over for him, and no one seems to know what happened to Douchebag. Edit: for those of you wondering and commenting, no, I did not stay in one place for 20 years. I would not stay working for some place only making minimum wage and not getting benefits. The retail business is really shading. The only raise I got was when minimum wage went up, but during the pandemic we all started making 0.30 cents more an hour, but when the state reopened and they announced that we'll be going back to minimum wage, more than half the staff left. The 20 years of experience is me working the retail industry with different jobs, and before anyone asks, yes, I have applied to management positions. I either get brushed off or they keep telling me because I don't have a degree that I cannot get the management position. I just wanted to clear that up. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.